nourishing traditional home-cooked meals for her husband and herself, and I admire you for that because that's not my thing. I wait till I'm starving and grab a couple rolls of ham and an apple or so. And your speech, again, the germaneness, I don't know if that's really a word, of Mary, you can grab me on that. Your speech title, that question, and Brady's speech, just fascinating since we didn't set it as a theme, returning home to tradition, 11 to 13 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. And there was going to be a couple guests, but they're not here. So here we go. The title of my speech is Coming Back Home. And for many of those who've been with me on this journey for the last couple of years, you know, you've come at my invitation to look at parts of my life that I've been able to share. And so I'm going to invite you once again to a time where I've been chronologically looking at different things that have happened in my life to maybe delve into and summarize why it is that these things happen and what are the lessons and blessings in situations that were challenging and difficult, and then I overcame them. And you know, what's the lesson that God the Creator is trying to tell me, you know, or maybe lessons that my family planted a seed a long time ago. So here I go. The date was July 11, 2013. Typical Sunday. My husband and I go to Ontario for church on Sundays, and it was a typical day. Sometimes I like to go out to the farmer's market, which is out in Claremont by the Claremont colleges, and so that's what I did that morning. We just had gotten a new car. It was a Hyundai Accent, I remember it. We'd had it maybe for just a few weeks, and I was just so proud. I had a new little car. I'm going to the farmer's market. You know, there's that little hour where my husband, he's the sound engineer for our church, and he gets everything ready. So I don't want to wait there at church for him, so sometimes I'll go to the farmer's market, get some nice produce so that we can have something nice for dinner that day. And so I did, and I was coming back through Claremont, out through Montclair, and if you know the Inland Empire, a lot of the streets out there are very wide. They're like not as narrow as the streets here in San Gabriel Valley. And so I was just driving along, and my light was green, 40 miles per hour. Green light, I'm going. And then at the corner of my eye, I see somebody speeding towards me. And I'm pretty nearsighted, but I'm like, yeah, that little side eye was like, that car, red car, it's not stopping. And it's in that split moment, I'm just like, they're not stopping. They're not stopping. And then I prepare for impact, and it's like that. And in that moment, the car hits me, and I'm crunches all parts of this new car that I have. And it's so funny because the night before, so many things, right? The night before I was reading a AAA magazine, and it said, you know, when you're driving, be sure to give yourself enough room in the driver's seat so that you're not right up against the airbag. And so when I was dropping my husband off, he goes, babe, you're too far close to the steering wheel. You need to push yourself back. I'm like, okay, Dad, here I go. And then I pull myself back. And it's that decision that saved my life, because when the impact happened, I had enough room for the airbag, all the airbags to open. Otherwise, my head would probably got, blown off because I was too close to the wheel. So there's a God-saving moment right there. And so when the impact happened, I was the glass was broken, everything was broken, everything was crunched. All the food that I got from the farmer's market was smashed right here. I mean, I got avocados and tomatoes and onions, and right next to me was guacamole.
Good salad.
It was a salad. And I mean, it was just one of those moments, and just like Elliot said, am I gonna be able to think straight what happened? What, just at the point of impact. So I see some it seemed like smoke coming off the front of the hood, and I was like, oh my gosh, this car's gonna blow up or something. So I get out of the car, I'm stuck and everything is like crunched and I'm trying to open the door. I crawl out and you just see all these people kind of like taking a picture of their cell phone and I'm just like, oh my God. So I crawl across the gravelly street down to the sidewalk and I just kind of sit there and I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? And I'm just like, I'm about to cry, try not to cry, trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do. And in that moment, there was this two ladies going this way on the road and they stop and they come to the sidewalk next to me and they're like, hey, are you okay? What's going on? And I don't know how they knew this, but they went back into the car, grabbed my purse, picked up my phone. I don't know how they did it, but they pushed some number and then next thing I know, they're calling my husband and they're on the phone and they're like, I think I just put in my phone, again, from that AAA magazine article, ICE, in case of emergency. I don't know how they found it, but they found my husband. It said ICE, in case of emergency, husband, and my husband's name, Tom Farrar. He goes, are you Tom? And then on speaker, your wife just got into a car accident. She's okay, but the ambulance is coming. We hear them. So here these ladies are calling my husband when I can't even think straight. I'm just like, everything is spinning. And then an ambulance comes. Next thing I know, I'm on a gurney. And it's summertime. It's July. And I'm wearing like a sundress and flip-flops. And everything just kind of rushed in. Next thing I know, my husband is like grabbing like one of my big toes. He's like, I'll meet you at the hospital. You're okay. You're going to be okay. And then I'm in the gurney. They're putting this thing on me. And next thing I know, the doctor's like, well, we have to do a full body scan because you're very bruised up, ma'am. There's a lot of bruises all over your body. You got to make sure you're not internally bleeding. So they put me in this tube and they check me and everything and they're like, oh my God. They're like, oh, we need to make sure you go into surgery right away. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Am I bleeding? He's like, no, but we just found a tumor the size of a grapefruit on your ovary. So how would I even know that, right? So they're like, it looks like it's pretty serious, ma'am. It could pop. You could be septic. We need to get you to the doctor. And I was like, everything is just spinning. So I get into the car accident. I find out this news. I'm not sure what I'm about to do, but there I just am in the hospital. I'm thinking, what is going on? My life has just changed in like the matter of like a few seconds. Some lady running a red light hit me, but then I found this news about myself and my health. At that time, it was a very scary situation and I didn't know what to do and it was just a lot of things happening at the same time. Now, in retrospect, all that happened to me was germane to the health journey that I find myself in. So that was 2013, nearly 12 years ago. At that moment when I thought that might be the end for me, when I know that impact is about to happen, I literally scream out to God. First I go, Tom, Tom, Tom. I'm screaming my husband's name because I don't want to die. I want to live a long time. I'm screaming his name and I'm like, God, please, I'm not ready to die. This is not the way I die, God. This is not the way I die, right? And then after that, the whole time I'm thinking, okay, what do I do? What do I do? How do I fix this? They just gave me this news about my ovarian cyst. Like, where do I go? What do I do? And so I had to go into my brain, go into my body, and dig down deep, 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 deep inside. What do I do? What do I know? How can I fix this? Where do I go? And you know what I did? I returned back to tradition. I Googled everything I could about traditional foodways, Filipino food, cooking from scratch. Anything that had to do with health and healing in a very traditional, old-fashioned way. And I went back to childhood because my parents are both immigrants from the Philippines. And as a young kid, I could tell you so many stories of how my mother raised me. She somehow intuitively knew how to feed me, how to care for me in a way that wasn't the American way. And I used to like reject that. I was like, Mom, you're so weird, Mom. Why can't you just be American? Why can't you just give me like the sandwich with the polka dots, which is Wonder Bread, and bologna sandwiches? And, like, what's this? Oh, honey, cow's brain soup, it's good for your brain. Oh, honey, here's fish soup. But Mom, how come it still has a tail? Well, here, let me scoop out the eyes for you because you're very nearsighted. We need to put eyeballs in your soup because it's good for your eyes. Mom, why am I eating this weird stuff? It's called marrow. It's good for your body and your bones. I don't understand. Mom, why am I eating this? It's an unfertilized duck egg called bolot. It's a Filipino specialty. Here you go. So all the things that I ate, I was like, as I grew up and then I got more Americanized, I was like, I don't like this stuff. This is horrible. I remember one specific recess when my mom and my uncle came to recess and my mom had packed me lunch. She had just become a Tupperware lady. And so she packed me a beautiful stew called dinuguan. So if you have Filipino friends and they're trying to play a trick on you, they're like, hey Taffy, would you like some dinuguan and rice?
Yes.
Yeah, well, you might not be so happy because dinuguan is pork's blood stew with intestines. But it was my favorite because I didn't know what it was. My mom called it chocolate stew. So because when you cook it, it does turn a color of dark chocolate, black. And I remember eating that, and then all the kids, this was second grade, all the kids, my uncle tells me this, and I remember too, I was eating it during recess, and the kids were like, teacher, look, Joy's eating she's eating like mud. And I after that I said, Mom, and then my uncle said, Cora, you need to pack her like American lunches with like that plastic cheese and the bologna and give her potato chips and cookies and stuff. I said, yeah, Mom, please. So that was the kind of, me kind of getting away from all the traditional stuff. But then in 2013, I had to dig down deep as to where I was going to heal, where I was going to, this ovarian cyst, I have different things. What am I going to do? So I Googled like traditional food ways, anything that has to do with ancient ancestral cooking. And I ran into an organization, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called the Weston A. Price Foundation. And I became very involved in that, and I've been involved in this organization for about 12 years. And there's a Pasadena chapter of which I'm the head of. So we've been meeting once a month for the last 12 years, up until January when the venue that we have up, it's called Nature Friends up in Sierra Madre, burned down. So we don't have a venue at the moment, but this is where I found my healing. So I dug down into what little Joy remembers, and I went to back where my mother was, my father, my grandparents, and I said, what did we used to eat? And it was long cooked bone broth. It's not just a trend anymore, and there was collagen and gelatin and marrow and all kinds of goodies and stuff in there, and that's how I started healing. So Weston A. Price is a Cleveland dentist that traveled the world extensively in the 1930s. He was a dentist who wanted to study all the different people in the world, and it was very interesting to me because I loved to read National Geographic. And so he observed the oral and overall health of many populations. He conducted research in areas like Switzerland, North America, Africa, Fiji, the South Pacific, and Australia, where he observed traditional diets that led to better dental, good facial structure, and teeth, firm bones, and mental clarity and physical fitness amongst these people. So he did his study, and he compared the modern diet to all these other more traditional ways, and this really resonated with me because when I was a young kid, I remember watching a movie, I think it was on this afternoon show called Family Film Festival. It's called Heidi, and it was a story of this girl that lived up with her grandfather up in the Swiss Alps, and then she befriended this other girl named Clara. Clara was a very wealthy young girl, but they never let her go outside. She was always in a wheelchair. She was in a very cold, damp mansion, and she never got any sun, so she was pale and skinny. And then she met Heidi, and Heidi took her up to the mountains, and she had fresh goat's milk and cheese and fresh bread, which I imagine is sourdough or something like that. And then she healed, and she even started walking. So I know that food is medicine. So that's what I did. I looked at the Weston A. Price diet, and it really resonated with me. And I remember also watching, do you guys remember a documentary called Food Inc.? It was based on the works of Joel Salatin, and it talked about the kind of foods that we have in modern society nowadays, with a lot of processed foods and a lot of foods that, fried foods, fast foods, and it really put an impact on me. I'm like, okay, so I need to find a way to go back to these traditional diets. So it just made sense to me. There's 11 principles of the diet, this traditional diet. It's the diet of non-industrialized people. So it contained really healthy foods, no like canned foods, corn syrup, refined sugars. It also has a variety of animal foods. So you can have something like bone marrow, like broths, and like cod liver oil, different traditional foods that you could find in every tradition. It also contained lots of vitamins in the food. So there's like 11 principles. Also, the culture also cooked their food in a way that made it really bioavailable and nutrient dense. A lot of the foods that I learned how to cook this way again is like, for example, lacto-fermented foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha. I remember when the first time I went to a meeting at Sierra Madre for that group called Weston Price, I came in with organic lemonade, and they're like, we don't drink that stuff, that's too much sugar. Don't you have any kefir soda or kombucha? And I was like, I don't know what that is. And I dragged my husband to the meeting, and he's like, these people are weird. These people, like, that guy has no shoes, and he said he's grounding. And he's like, I don't even know what that means. Why is he grounding? I'm like, I don't know. And then he goes, these aren't your people, they're weirdos. And then I said, I don't care, I like them. I think they're so interesting. And then a couple years later, my involvement with Weston Price, I became the chapter leader for the Pasadena chapter, because he was sending me off to our conference. We have a conference every year called the Wise Traditions, and it's coming up in October, the 25th year this year. And so one time he was sending me off to a conference. He's like, you know what, babe, you have a great time at the conference because you're the queen of the weirdos in Pasadena. That's what he calls me. So other aspects of the diet is like seeds and grains and different things. They're soaked and sprouted, so they're more bioavailable, so that the nutrients are there and the enzymes are there. It has a lot of good fat content. It has a balance of omega-6 and omega-3s in the diet. There's good unrefined salts. The food is cooked in traditional ways of making the foods like not only nutritious but tasty. So you could have like things that are cooked in tallow and chicken bone broth, and make sure that the bones are cooked long enough to release all the good stuff from the bones. And the most important thing that I think like my mom also knew too was the traditional diets. They know how to preserve the culture. When I was born, I was a preemie, and my mom, she didn't eat very well, and she was very depleted. But then 5 years later, she had my sister, and my sister, I was a 2-pound baby. Then, a few years later, because my mom was, following the traditional ways and really took care of herself, my sister was an 8-pound baby, and she was super healthy, and to this day, she's very healthy. So my mom knew these different things that she implemented, and then even though I didn't have my mom for a long time, I learned like the basics of certain things about her, the way that she taught me. Unfortunately, both of my parents succumbed to the American diet, and they passed away early. My mother had passed away of breast cancer because she was a diabetic with high blood pressure and all the different complications. And my father also passed away with a brain aneurysm way too soon for their years. I mean, I wish that I could have them now and I could take care of them as older adults, but I didn't have that opportunity. So this return to tradition is very important to me. Even though we live in a modern world, a lot of the food ways, a lot of the things that I've learned with my association with Weston Price is coming back home. And so up to this point where I was like in the sad American diet, I had a lot of failures, but now, you know, a lot of you know that in January I experienced another health setback, but instead of calling it failure, I call this time that I've had up through now, even the ups and downs, as a gift, truly a gift, because it's allowed me to not only nourish myself like physically, but also like nourishing myself mentally in community and eating well. So it's been a journey, and it continues to be a journey. So this is just progress over perfection, and I feel that by eating this certain way and following this traditional food way, I'm making a choice that every bite that I choose to eat is improving my health, and then when I'm healthy, then I could give back to like my community. And so that's the way I'm changing the world, is one bite at a time by improving my health and nourishing myself in order to like be able to be the joy that I can for the people around me. And that's all I have to say.
You are a joy.